Welcome to The Story Behind the Symptoms, a podcast from Symptomatic.me. Your host is David Clarke, MD, a board-certified gastroenterologist who successfully diagnosed and treated over 7,000 patients with neuroplastic pain or illness. Each episode, we dive into our guests' life experiences to uncover the deeper causes of their symptoms. By listening to their story, you will gain insights that advance your own journey towards knowledge that becomes healing.
Hello, and welcome to the Story Behind the Symptoms podcast. I am your host, Dr. David Clarke, the president of the Association for Treatment of Neuroplastic Symptoms. And what we do in this podcast is we talk to someone who has had neuroplastic symptoms themselves and try to understand the story behind them, not only the creation of the symptoms, but often the recovery from those symptoms as well. It's almost always someone that I haven't met extensively before, and that's definitely the case today with my guest, Jeannie. Jeannie, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much, Dr. Clarke. Thanks for having me. So my name is Jeannie Kulwin. I am a chronic pain coach and a stress coach in Los Angeles. I used to be a school teacher, so there was a lot of stress and a lot of putting other people's needs ahead of mine. So I am your classic TMS in terms of all the personality types and characteristics. But yeah, glad to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm looking forward to hearing your story. I do have to mention that we are recording this on day 7 or 8 of the Los Angeles fires, and you live in that area, so I really appreciate your making the time amidst all that chaos to be with us.
Yeah.
Why don't we go ahead and start with how your symptoms got started, how long ago that was, and what was going on at that time?
Yeah, so all the way back to my early 20s where I was getting stress fractures and shin splints and starting with PT at a very young age, 19, 20, 21, all these stress fractures, all these severe stress fractures, shin splints, physical therapy all through my 20s. And that was just the little intro to all of this. It didn't really make sense. People were thinking, oh, you must be a hardcore athlete, but going to the gym a few times a week, it didn't really make sense. That's kind of the through line with all of these neuroplastic symptoms. They don't make any sense until you're in this community, and then it all just clicks and makes so much sense. So at age 26 is when I started having really chronic and debilitating symptoms. I started getting really bad ankle pain on both of my ankles. That's the sign right there. Both ankles, no injury, no accident. On the inside, the outside, burning, tight, horrible pain just out of nowhere. And that's really where this whole thing started, so at the time, looking back, I did buy my condo. At the time, I'm 26 years old. So that is a big thing. But another common through line you'll see is that I'm minimizing stress all the time. I also ended a relationship at that time. And my brain, again, it's not a big deal. We were only together 6 months. So I was going through a breakup and buying this property, but it's the summer. I was a high school teacher. So again, didn't think there was anything that stress was affecting me with all the physical symptoms. That really started. I live in Los Angeles. We have great doctors here. So I saw, every doctor, the neurologist, getting all the nerve tests done. I had a surgery to he removed some of the entrapments in this area, which did nothing, as you can imagine. PT, chiropractor, acupuncture, all the things multiple times, right? MRIs. And then 2 years later, they want a new MRI, new scans. I also started having digestive issues a few years later. So now I'm kind of running around town with like a chicken with my head cut off again to find answers. I did an endoscopy. I did all the tests, the scans, the NT doctor, and nothing's coming up. So this is like the first 4 years of my journey, looking, searching, trying, but really stressed out and feeling like there was something wrong with me. So that was the beginning. That was like the first stage. And then at age 30 is when I started having debilitating back pain. And the back pain was so bad that now I'm not sleeping. So because I couldn't sleep at night, I was in so much pain. So on top of the ankles, and my case is a bit, again, this is so characteristic of neuroplastic pain, but I would have horrible flares, and then maybe it would be summer and I'd get better. And I think I was over it. I'd go back to school. See, I always thought, Dr. Clarke, when I went back to school the first day back, it was because I was standing. Oh, my back hurts because I'm standing and I was in the summer not standing. And
We're always looking for a physical explanation because we assume that if you have pain or illness, it has to be from disease or injury.
yeah, and I wasn't standing straight, right? And oh my gosh, with all the ankle pain, I went down a huge rabbit hole of orthotics and the right orthotics and new orthotics and the podiatrist and all these things, which was not helpful at all. It just fueled my fear and more reliance on something physical, like you said, to heal me. So now in my early 30s, I'm chasing the back pain. It's top, it's bottom, it's spasm, it's debilitating. Now I've got really bad anxiety to go on top of everything. So the ankles are still there. They come and go. They flare. They really brought me the most stress probably of all my symptoms, because literally every time I took a step, I would walk. It just flooded me with fear and frustration and anger. I didn't have any understanding of like anything now what's going on in my body, because I had so much anxiety. Now I'm getting depressed really easily. Life looked pretty bleak. And this was kind of going on throughout my whole phase of having a flare, things calming down, getting really, activated. Again, I wrote down some of the things that I did because it's just amazing, like seeing the rheumatologist, the foot and ankle doctors, multiple rounds of, hypnotherapy, Chinese healing, functional doctors, back injections, IVs, like all the things. So that was kind of like stage 2, I would say. And then I was also getting like horrible hemorrhoids that were so painful and embarrassing to like even tell anyone, right? And as a school teacher, I'm like, okay, guys, my back hurts. I just need to sit down. So I'm kind of just like biting the pain and my back's hurting, and it was a big mess. So that's like stage 2.
Yeah, your brain was trying to communicate with you in a louder and louder voice, so to speak.
Yeah, and then I just got caught on doing more and more things and trying new things. And now I'm really stressed out again with all the time and energy and money that I'm spending. My whole life is kind of in this. And then I would have a couple months where things were relatively calm, but it always come back. It always flared up again.
It's one of my hopes for this podcast and for everything that ATNS is doing that someday the general public will know that in addition to disease and injury, a cause of symptoms is your brain. And if people knew that, they would begin to think, if there wasn't an obvious disease or injury going on, they'd start thinking about, well, what's going on in my brain? But as a member of the general public at that time who was not aware of these concepts, you just kept looking for physical explanations, and for years and years. And
Yeah.
wouldn't it be great if it was common knowledge that your brain could do this kind of thing to you?
Yeah, and that's why I'm so passionate to sharing this, because I had I think there's still more to come, right? But 16-year journey. And yeah, there's just hope that it can be quick. I mean, everyone's journey is different, but my healing, once I learned these concepts, I healed pretty quickly.
All right, yeah, let me not interrupt your story. Normally when I'm talking to a patient in my office, I just shut up and listen. But for the purposes of the podcast, I like to interject from time to time.
Yeah, no, I like it. And also too, so like again, in my late 30s, that's where I got the official diagnosis from maybe 3 or 4 different doctors about fibromyalgia. So now I have an actual diagnosis, which actually helped me feel better, because I remember there was a wedding I couldn't go to and I felt really ashamed, right? Because I thought about the fear of the airport. Oh my gosh, I had such a bad ankle flare, and I couldn't even imagine walking through LAX with that much pain in my ankles, the security checks and all that. And even the thought of like I could get a wheelchair, I couldn't deal with like anything. So I didn't go to the wedding. And then a couple days later, I got my first diagnosis for FM, which is fibromyalgia. And it actually brought me a ton of relief, and it brought me validation. And then even telling my family that I couldn't go to this wedding up in Northern California, but I'm not like a freak, because I felt like that. I felt like what's wrong with me. I actually felt validated that I had the FM fibromyalgia diagnosis, which probably other people might be able to relate to. But then it turns out it didn't help so much, as you can imagine. Now I'm on gabapentin and different drugs.
Yeah, but it is an important step to at least be able to put a name to it. That helps a lot of people feel like, you're not going crazy. You have a real thing.
Yeah, so real neuroplastic thing. Yeah, and so let's see, kind of in my late 30s also, so I was dealing with that. I was also dealing with chronic sinus infections. That was one of my last things that I was dealing with. I was getting chronic sinus infections, and also I dealt with chronic fatigue, which was pretty debilitating. So at the end of my teaching career, that happened, right? Adrenal burnout. And so then I was on medical leave a few times. So I was on medical leave the summer before I left. So I had like 2 months for summer. I took 3 months. I was 5 months on medical leave. And I know you're not going to be shocked, but just for context, when I went back to work full time, my chronic fatigue went away very quickly. So I did really get stuck with the chronic fatigue because I didn't know about this work in the identity. I was such a victim. I mean, I don't judge myself because at the time I didn't know. I was doing what the doctors told me, which was to rest, not to work, but it was really, really hard. So it was really hard. I'm living alone at the time, to be like living alone, having people help, like my dad. This was before a lot of the apps where you could get groceries delivered, right? My dad's picking up groceries for me. Oh my gosh, I went down this horrible rabbit hole of the elimination diets. I'm sure a lot of you can relate to taking out everything.
I've had patients who come to see me and they're down to white bread and rice and they've just taken one thing after another out of their diet until they're down to next to nothing. I should also add, for people that are new to this that are watching, that the more symptoms a person has and the more different they are from each other in terms of their qualities and their locations in the body, the more likely it is that the explanation is a neuroplastic symptom process.
Yeah, and all mine were just the most classic, I feel like, all the ones that I've mentioned, especially with the back when nothing shows up on. I mean, I know even if you have a herniated disc, we know that can be neuroplastic, but in my case, nothing was showing up, not even anything that's was any abnormality. So that's, again, kind of weird. And I was active, but I think Charlie Merrill says everyone's an athlete, but I wasn't a hardcore athlete or anything. I work out and play tennis here and there. So I always thought that was interesting that I'm getting so many injuries and nothing's really happening. Like, it wasn't like I played tennis and had an injury. It was just, again, out of nowhere. So at the end of my journey before I discovered all this, I was the adrenal burnout, the complete chronic fatigue. So at that point, I was getting IV injection, kind of going the more functional medical route. And the IV injections, I feel like, gosh, if I can prevent anyone from getting, in my case, they're just vitamins, but there was magnesium. I would get exhausted. They're very, very expensive. There was one doctor, I saw a different functional doctor, again, right before finding all of this approach. And it was this huge protocol, Dr. Clarke, with coming to see her regularly. We're going to do, prolotherapy and then some type of testing.
Yeah.
So,
No, there's all kinds of those things out there. And, you don't have to search the internet very far to find all kinds of things that people recommend for what are actually neuroplastic symptoms and that have a scientifically validated approach to them. Adrenal fatigue, for example, is not a diagnosis that is recognized by, any legitimate physician, but it's a diagnosis that is put on people with mind-body neuroplastic symptoms all the time.
yeah. And then I also, just to go back, because I don't know when this was, but I did a whole 6, 7, 8 months with Ayurveda, which is healing coming, from India. And again, all in. So it's like a kind of just all in, get my hope up. The practitioner, the healer says that they can heal me. I was doing Reiki. I was doing any alternative healers. I'm in LA, so it's easy to find, energy healers, Reiki, like people that could kind of save me and heal me, so to speak. I was also seeing, and I just think this was not helpful. So I was seeing like 2 different sleep doctors, getting numerous tests for all my sleep issues, right? The insomnia. Hello, it's stress, it's anxiety, it's pain. Things go away when you can get out of pain. So I went down a huge rabbit hole with sleep, like stay over in her office, and she hooks up things to me. And like, she told me I had sleep apnea, which doesn't make any sense. I've been retested. I have no sleep apnea. I think like sometimes people are just looking for things to diagnose you with, right? Because I don't have sleep apnea. And the fact that like that was told, and
Yeah, they're the physicians who are trained to find organ diseases and structural damage as the only possible explanations for a patient's symptoms. They will bend over backwards trying to make you fit into that box. But once you have the idea that the brain can do this to people, I mean, one of my patients had a completely paralyzed stomach. Another one was moving her bowels once a month. Another one I was asked to see on her 70th day in the hospital for unexplained abdominal pain, and she was getting massive doses of morphine around the clock for unexplained abdominal pain. The level of severity of what your brain can do to you, and as you experienced in more than one location in the body, the one huge difference that we have in our treatment approach is that it has been tested in randomized controlled trials, absolutely rigorous science in centers across North America that have shown that our approach works. And the Reiki and the Ayurvedic and the acupuncture, I mean, they may be good for other things, but they don't have anything like the evidence that we have to show that it actually works. And obviously, in your case, was not helpful. They also might have some placebo value, but the pain relief psychology approach, it's now been tested in, half a dozen different trials now, has a massively better outcome than placebo. All right, Laurie, again, if I was in my office, I would just shut up and let you tell your story, but please go ahead.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. So just to kind of conclude with the craziness is all this is going on and it's exhausting. And there's a lot of shame I felt through this journey. I mean, how many times was I told there's nothing wrong with you or your scan looks normal and like,
Yeah, so it's all your fault, and you're just some kind of failure. You can't handle your own stress. There's nothing you can do for you. You're just going to have to live with it. And not one of those things is true, but those are the assumptions that most medical professionals bring to a patient like yourself, is that there's something neurotic about you. Not true at all. My patients are mentally stronger than average. They're just coping with much bigger levels of stress than they realize, and that, pretty much anybody else realizes.
yeah, I mean, if I hear one more doctor like that's not normal, that's not normal, or everyone else heals with this treatment, or everyone else, I don't know, Jeannie, and like over and over and over again.
That's a big one. I should emphasize that many people have been told, well, we think it's, this mild degeneration that you have in your back, which actually is very common as part of the aging process, or they're given some kind of biomedical explanation for their symptoms, but they don't respond to treatment the way the physician expects.
Right, and when they don't respond, or any practitioner, then the fault is on.
It's gotta be your fault.
So I felt that, and so now I'm feeling shame and guilt. Oh, and I didn't know how to feel any of this, Dr. Clarke, as you can imagine, because I'm your classic, patient. So yeah, so all the guilt, all the shame, all the frustration, the sadness, the anger, that's all there and just compounding. So that's basically it. But I was in therapy at the time. Obviously, you can imagine that wasn't helpful. I know therapy can be helpful, but this therapist wasn't. She just kind of minimized it, and I just complained and
Yeah, the traditional cognitive behavioral therapy, which dominates psychotherapy in the United States, unfortunately doesn't work very well for this condition. And we have seen that in the research trials where it's used as a control group. UCLA, not far from you, with the new kind of emotional awareness and expression therapy, which is one of the subtypes of pain relief psychology, they got, in a very tough population, older male veterans with chronic musculoskeletal pain, and they got 2/3 of them to achieve at least 30% pain relief. And the control group was cognitive behavioral therapy, and it was only 17% that reached the same standard. So almost quadruple the success rate with the new kind of psychology. So what you got, the old kind of psychology, so it's not a shock that it didn't work.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because I would cry in therapy. This is when therapy was in person because it was before the pandemic, and I would think I'm doing great. I'm like, oh my God, I'm crying in therapy. Look at me, like I'm feeling my emotions. But it wasn't. I'm just stuck in the story, and it was victim. And I'll just say the last thing, there's I'm sure things I'm forgetting, but another thing that was so stressful was the supplements. Because when I changed my diet and was eating very little, then I was, oh my goodness. And I mean, going on a trip, even for one night, I mean, travel was stressful as it was because of all my symptoms. But then, and I joke about this with other people in this community, of half the suitcase no exaggeration, orthotics and, your back support and all the supplements. And again, that just fuels more and more and more fear and more preoccupation because it's all day. This pill twice a day with food, this one before food, this one at evening, right? And forgetting thing. And again, this reliance on supplements, which again, time and so much money. Whew. So that's
Yeah, I got
the
the
list.
supplement industry is, I've forgotten exactly the numbers, but it's something like a 20 or $30 billion industry in the United States. There are tens of thousands of different supplements out there are very, the regulations of those things is very limited. Able to get away with marketing themselves as a food product so they don't have to document that there's any efficacy to them whatsoever. And it's part of the industry that preys upon people who have symptoms like yours and makes it difficult to find the treatment that you really need.
Yeah, and it's interesting, right? Since you're taking so many supplements, I mean, none of them worked anyway, but if they were to work, you wouldn't know because of taking so many. I mean, who knows what's working and what's not at that point. So, yeah, so that was kind of what I did and what I had. And then I can go on to the turning point if you.
Yeah, let's do that. I mean, I can't believe you have such a cheerful demeanor in describing all of this because it's just absolutely horrifying what you went through and how long you had to go through it. But let's get happy here. What happened next?
Yeah, so kind of all synchronicity, which amazing, right? Synchronicity meant to be, was ready for the information at the time. I started working with a mind body coach, and that was the first time where I understood. It was so funny. Like, I did not understand anything about being in your body. Like, I literally asked her, I said, "Are you sure it's good to be grounded? Like, just because you're my coach, like, I don't believe you're right." I could not understand why being in your head was not better. Like, I literally, okay, you're my coach, but I don't think she's right kind of vibe. And we went over, so being grounded, okay, so that was huge for me.
I'm sorry. Well, what was your coach telling you that you had trouble accepting exactly?
Like, I was always in my head, and I thought that that's fantastic. Why wouldn't you want it? Why isn't that healthy to be in your head 24/7, overthinking, overanalyzing? I don't know. This is what I know. I don't understand why should it be helpful to be more in your body and like that body part, right? So I was like the mind girl. No, there's no body. It was like a head only. So I started working with her in like the mind body capacity. And that was really helpful also with being more gentle, the self compassion, understanding emotions, which I was completely cut off from, no surprise. So coming back into my body, feeling more safe in my body was huge. And that's where I started incorporating a little bit more like these mind body concepts. But she wasn't familiar at all with how to help chronic pain, neuroplastic pain. So that was unfortunate, but it did get me to my next step. So, found information on neuroplastic pain, more of the TMS, before that was like what we were calling it, but reading the books, things are resonating. Oh my goodness, I mean, every symptom I mentioned to you today, like fibromyalgia is like usually number one on any of on your website of like anything that we know for sure. And like all my symptoms, digestion and the hemorrhoids and, the chronic fatigue, it's just like classic back pain, ankle pain on both ankles. There's no, like nothing happened to me. I had no injury and it moves. Yeah. In the back, it moves and it goes away and it comes back.
Yeah, we had a conference. We had a conference in 2010 in Los Angeles, and one of the speakers was describing ankle pain so bad she was in a wheelchair.
Yeah, and that was the thing too, going back to the ankle pain. I mean, there were times I would just be on the couch, just obviously like on the floor crying, on the couch crying, and just not wanting to move because it did seem to dissipate my pain when I was not walking, right? So for the ankles, kind of the solution is, well, stay in bed, right? Stay on the couch, which is debilitating. But yeah, not wanting to deal with it anymore. I mean, it's debilitating. It is such a lonely journey. I didn't know anyone who was dealing with any chronic illness, any chronic anything. I met a lady maybe at the very end of my journey who had fibromyalgia, and I just cried. I'd never met anyone who had anything that I had. And the good thing is I wasn't on the Facebook forums for these things. That did help. I didn't like Google too much my symptoms, so I didn't go down that doom and gloom, but it was extremely lonely, extremely just all the emotions, right? Not having.
No, people, obviously they who have this. I mean, there could have been another Jeannie Kulwin 2 blocks away, and that person wouldn't be talking about it. And you were probably not talking about it except for people very close to you. So most others would not have known what you were coping with. But yeah, there's 50 million people in the United States that suffer from this, and many of them feel isolated.
Yeah, and then having to go as a teacher, go to work and put on your smile and pretend to be, that was, again, being perfect, right? And in teaching, I kind of think is like the perfect storm of perfection, right? People pleasing, just not being allowed to be like not having your needs met also. So yeah, so then that got me. So from the mind body coach, then I found information, read books about mind body and like what it really was. And everything just clicked. I healed pretty quickly, but I also had done, like I said, the mind body coaching, but I also had spent a decade in the personal development space of, trying to understand myself and my thoughts. And it wasn't exactly like spot on, like I did life coaching before. So it wasn't like exactly spot on to what we know now in the chronic pain, community, but it was very like growth mindset oriented, right? Where I was ready for new ideas. I was ready to start thinking differently. I was ready to like do like deeper work on myself, where if I hadn't been immersed in that, it probably would have been more difficult. Does that make sense with?
Absolutely, yeah. Kind of a good foundation for the deeper work to come.
Yeah, definitely. And I'd always been interested in life coaching, and I knew I was not in alignment with my teaching job. I was a high school teacher. I taught Spanish, and I just wasn't in love with it anymore. And I knew that. And so maybe, I mean, could definitely be that, the pain was keeping me in a safe job. I mean, I'm joking, maybe, like I know it's pretty true, but yeah, I know I wanted to leave, but leaving a very stable job, like teaching is the most safe and secure. You have tenure and health benefits and easily would be set, right? And I had that longing to do my own thing. Yeah, so I'll get into that in a second. But yeah, so finding this, the books and the information and gosh, let me think. Yeah, and then I started working with a coach who was more specific in this, neuroplastic pain arena. I remember like the sinus infections, that was the last thing. I was like, could accept everything else, but I didn't really see sinus infections as much in the, the symptoms. And it was quite reassuring to be like, no, Jeannie, this is another TMS symptom. Like, and I've had a little bit of, relapses with that a bit. And I'm like, I'm not feeling when this comes, this is like my cue that I am not feeling my emotions. It's really interesting on that one.
Yeah, it's becomes so useful to use the symptoms as a form of communication from your mind and your brain that is trying to tell you something that you need to pay attention to something in your life rather than it just focusing on it as a symptom.
Yeah, no, definitely. So I knew it was holding me. And it's crazy because it was kind of like the double-edged sword, right? Because on one level, it was keeping me safe in a job, right? So it's like, I can't quit my job and start my own business. I am sick and I need my health insurance like nobody else, right? I'm using it so much. But then on the other hand, I didn't I really hated it. Like I was so out of alignment. So it really took a lot of bringing down the fear and bringing up the faith that I could heal. I found mind body healing in 2019 and I quit my job in 2019.
Wow.
So yeah, so it's like trusting myself, and I quit I was quit, and I still quit in a flare because as a teacher, I mean, you don't have to quit in the summer, but again, I'm a goodest little teacher, so it is, optimal to quit in the summer so that they can, find a
Find a
replacement.
replacement. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, from comparing the life coaching and personal growth information that you studied with mind body concepts that you then studied after that, what would you say, if you can, were the ideas or maybe just one idea that were the most beneficial to you? That, there was something different about the mind body approach from the personal growth and coaching that clearly made a difference. And can you tell our viewers maybe something about that?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people might be able to resonate. I never use this word, very rare. Like I don't use it this way about, and a lot of like the life coaching is like just be positive, right? Just manifest. I even had someone say that to me when I was in the throes of all this. Well, just manifest yourself getting better and just be positive. Oh my gosh. No. So that's kind of that toxic positivity with like maybe life coaching or someone who doesn't understand this neuroplastic, like what this means and how to heal this. I think the biggest thing that helped me was that, like, if I could say one sentence that helped my recovery more than anything is that the fear absolutely was fueling my symptoms. So when I read and learned about neuroplastic pain and understood it, I didn't really have fear because it's like click, 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 everything's clicking. Like, I mean, I just had such a classic case, all my symptoms, there's no reason, there's no explanation, there's nothing. So I think I was just able to bring my fear down so quickly, which I know is hard for some people, but I just bought in. Like the more you can buy in, the better. You don't have to 100%, but I just did. I just seeing the research and made sense. And I don't come back from I don't have any background in the medical field or, anything. And I didn't even, like my brain, I don't need to see like all the studies and like the research. I just, seeing and hearing success stories and just really, it just made so much sense. I'm sure you've heard, right? People are reading a book and it's just like, that's me, right? Even if the symptom isn't you, because the personality types were just so spot on. I mean, classic. I mean, you just put my picture on your website of like, the personality types. They're just so, yeah.
Yeah, it's there really isn't any other condition but a neuroplastic process or neuroplastic symptom that can do everything that you had. I mean, fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue and sinus symptoms and ankle pain and, irritable bowel, all of these things, at the same time in the same person. There's just not another single disease that's capable of doing that. But neuroplastic symptoms do that all the time. I mean, they are routinely capable of, some people just have the one symptom. Many people have got lots of symptoms. My personal record patient had 27 different symptoms that he personally was suffering from, came to me with the printout from the internet, had circled every single thing that he was dealing with. But, fortunately, the underlying cause was fairly straightforward, and he recovered quite well.
And I wanted to say too, as a lot of people come to us and they're worried because they have so many symptoms. So I think that's important why I like to share that I had so many symptoms, because if someone has one symptom, to your point, or they have many, right? And if you can relate to playing whack-a-mole with your symptoms, like this one pops up and that one, I mean, that's a huge, concept that we can resonate with. But yeah, to bring some calm and some recognition that having a lot of symptoms doesn't mean it's going to take longer or you're
That's right.
harder to heal. Yeah, if you look at my story, hopefully it's inspiring, because it was quicker than
That absolutely is inspiring. And I should add, it's not only the number of symptoms, but how long they go on for. I mean, the longer you have your symptoms, the more likely they are to be neuroplastic, especially for you, 16 years. My personal record patient, I went in to see her in the examination room. She's 87 years old. She's been having abdominal pain since she was age 8.
Yeah. And I've had clients too with that. And so also, I think this is cool when I look back, because sometimes currently things can scare me, or I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm worried about something, but I'm like, Jeannie, you did that? Wow, that's awesome. Like I quit my job in the summer, like I was telling you, because I was either quit now or wait till Christmas. I was like, I don't have it. I can't, right? So I quit in the summer when I was still in a big flare with, I don't know, I think at that point it was like the horrible sinus infections, which is super debilitating. It feels like, I mean, I couldn't think, I couldn't concentrate. Like, how am I launching a business with this? Like all this pressure, again, pressure, no accident, right? But I'm just really, that I just continued to have that faith. It's like I had all this faith again. And I like started to believe in myself and believe in, again, when you can't trust your body, it's really hard just to trust yourself in general. And when you start to get out of your head all the time and get into your intuition, and that's what I was learning to do. I was learning to trust my intuition before I didn't, because I was in my head all the time.
Okay. Yeah, no, I completely understand that. It connects very well with so many stories that I've heard in my own office. Another part that connects with all this are the personality traits, and I want to talk about those a little bit. You mentioned goodism and people pleasing and perfectionism and repressing emotions. Can you talk a little bit about those and maybe any others that I've left out?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think I didn't even know goodism was a word. And when I saw it in a book, I was like, oh, wow, that's me. Yeah, just I think as a teacher too, just wanting, being good all the time. And there was a lot of people pleasing with students or with the faculty, right? Of getting in trouble. Oh my gosh, I'm 40 years old. I still don't want to be in trouble with the principal, right? Or in trouble at school. Like I was terrified of I didn't know until like 8 years ago it was okay to make a mistake, that you're normal, that this is growth, that you're learning and growing when you make a mistake. I just was terrified and took things so personally with like making mistakes, or so that wouldn't want to try new things because I was terrified of making mistakes. So that, yes, that all or nothing thinking too, I think is so common. It goes with perfectionism, but it goes with like everything, right? Like I can't wash the dishes unless I have time to do all of them, or well, I don't have 30 minutes, so why bother to go on a 20-minute walk? I don't have like full time. So really having this all or nothing mindset. Yeah, people pleasing with, like I said, even, friends and family. Yeah, like it was all of it. I don't know if I'm forgetting any, but definitely not feeling emotions. I can talk about that.
Yeah, we'll get to the emotions. One of the ones that I want to be sure to mention that affects a lot of my patients is they don't take enough time to care for themselves, enough time for their own joy, enough time to put themselves on the list of people they take care of. They're always putting their own needs on the shelf and putting them behind the needs of everybody else in their world. And that can absolutely catch up with you after a while. Was that an issue that you had yourself?
Yeah, I think the self-compassion, I didn't even know what my needs were. I mean, really, like, what are my needs? I'm getting water. I have a house, so I'm safe. I'm eating, like, that's my needs. Who knew that there are deeper needs, right? Like safety, even creativity, right? If you're never creative, or you're not having fun and you're not enjoying, right? Or you need like intellectual stimulation, yes, I totally agree with that. And also, I kind of minimize my needs too because I don't have kids, and I had a lot of friends. I don't know why, that like this was my thing. I don't have kids, so I can't be stressed, right? And it shouldn't be this difficult. And I don't know, again, like I don't know, I shouldn't be stressed because I don't have kids. And yeah, absolutely, with other people's needs. In my case, it was like the students and making sure that they were okay. Yeah, and in terms of emotions, I mean, again, thinking, believing that being in your head, or that's how I was, so I just assumed everyone was. Yeah, like especially like the anger, the frustration, feeling that and knowing that it's safe. So I grew up not knowing, especially as as a little girl and then as a woman, like anger was not seen as safe, or wasn't kind of allowed, so to speak. And so learning that it was safe and I could express it in safe ways. Yeah. And like even the sadness, it's like if I was sad growing up, it's like something's wrong with me. It was that same perspective that something's wrong with me, instead of like, okay, I'm sad. Like, what do I need right now? And it's normal to be sad. I didn't know that.
Yeah, that is a very important point to make, and I think is one that a lot of viewers will relate to. Is that many times people grew up in situations where there wasn't an obvious trauma going on, but there was nevertheless something about the environment that led to these personality characteristics, that led to emotions being pushed down and buried and repressed and not recognized, and that led to people focusing much more heavily on the needs of others in the family environment than they did thinking about themselves. Many of my patients, for example, as children, there was something going on in the household where they didn't learn sufficiently how to play. And when we play as children, we are learning self-care skills. We're learning how to put ourselves on the list of people we take care of. And if we don't learn to play, if we're too busy focusing on other people in the household, then as adults, the idea of taking time for ourselves just makes us feel guilty.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a huge thing I see a lot, right? Feeling guilty. And I think another thing that's so honest is that I didn't know what my needs were. Like, I really didn't. And think about when we're in a partnership or with any relationship, if you don't know what your needs are, it's hard to communicate to your partner, your kids, your whoever it is, like your friends, whoever the relationship, your family members. So learning what our needs are, getting our needs met by ourselves in certain areas, and then sure, asking for what you need at work, right? Like this was stuff that, so I think just, knowing what your needs are, and that it's not selfish to have needs above water, shelter, food. Like, yeah, those are I think those are like the basic Maslow's survival needs.
Yes.
But it's not selfish to have like the higher needs, right? Like I said, like your need for safety and connection, right? That's what I was needing when I was living alone and feeling so isolated. I need connection. Then what can happen is we go to coping strategies that aren't helpful, right? Like eating too much, or numbing with alcohol, numbing with, substances, shopping, Instagram, social media. So We don't
Exercise, gambling, food, sex, or work. Yeah, long list of um, what we might call behavioral addictions.
Yeah, and then now you have to work on the behavioral addiction and then still work on feeling your emotions. So,
Yeah.
and no judgment because look at
No, they are all simply coping mechanisms. I should include eating disorders and cutting behavior that I've seen in some of my patients. They are nothing more than ways to cope with very high levels of stress that are the source of which is usually not recognized. Do you have any sense, again, you don't have to go into this in any detail, but I am curious if you can recall anything that would have caused you not to be familiar with your own needs when you were growing up, because that's a pretty profound loss to have.
It sticks out like no instances in particular, but I just think that emotions were such a foreign language concept, right? And like the nervous system regulation like wasn't a thing, or validating if, like I said, like if I was sad, or again, it's like the best parent, I have like great parents, but just if I'm sad, they don't want me to be sad. So here's a lollipop, or let's do this, or don't be sad. It's like not allowing a child, I think in my case, like allowing and I'm sensitive. I'm so sensitive. I'm a huge empath. So I'm picking up from other people. I'm picking up my own, and then kind of, told like, well, move, like if I'm sad, I'm in a bad mood. So like, okay, well, come on, like you're in a bad mood. So get out of it. It just was not normalizing at all how healthy our emotions are. So I would say for me, that was the thing that I didn't understand like at all. Having emotions was safe. It's normal. I just thought it was something to handle. And there was something wrong with me. If I was angry, I shouldn't be. That was just not.
And it sounds like handling the emotions meant pushing them down.
Yeah, get over it. Right. And then kind of that's how I was looking at my symptoms too. Like I need to just get over this. And here we go again. What's wrong with me that I have anger at some point, or what's wrong with me that I have sadness and now I have symptoms, and what's wrong with me? And so the whole time I'm going through this journey, also this health struggle. Yeah, it's just another, thing that was wrong with me. The other thing that I did too that could be helpful, there's different like ways to heal, of course. But at the end of, when I've like found this approach and I'm like doing the work, I don't know if I'm kind of a yoga teacher who doesn't practice.
Okay.
Like that joke, David Clarke, of like the tree in the forest, if it falls, does it really make a noise, right? So if you're a yoga teacher, you don't teach, are you really? But I think that was helpful for me getting my certification. Just again, like the mind body, right? Anything that I could do to be more in my body. And I became a breathwork teacher, and I love that, and like meditation teacher. So I started doing a lot on my own. Breathwork really supported me because it was like in my body and allowed me to feel my emotions. So I really think on my journey that breathwork really supported me to, again, like something that the huge thing that I see is that when I was in the throes of chronic pain and was looking for someone else to save me, and it's like, oh my gosh, like if I could go give that girl a hug and be like, you have the power within yourself. So this mind body healing, I mean, you can absolutely heal 100% by yourself. Like there's so much information out there, but I think like if we have tools, like for me, like breath work helped because then I could hold space for myself. I didn't have to, okay, my coach is busy, or the person that, I get moral support, like I could like support myself. So any practices that support you, that bring you closer to your, like your truth is just wonderful.
Yeah. That description that you just gave, I mean, it sounds completely like you were giving yourself emotional self-care
Yeah.
that you didn't get when you were young. And what a lot of kids will do when they're not getting the care that they need when they're young is that they will try to be perfect, and they will try to be better. They will try to be as the best little kids that they can be, as a way of, as they're really their main strategy for trying to get the emotional self-care that they need.
And
Go ahead.
Yeah, just to bring this back to, because you mentioned that we're at the very, day 8 or whatever day it is with like the fires. I live in Los Angeles. Is just, we were talking before we recorded about how well these tools that I've learned supported me last week moving through this, because these are not quick fixes. Like feeling your emotions is not a quick fix to get out of chronic pain. And then I had a client ask me like, okay, Jeannie, like feeling the emotions, I'm doing better. My pain is gone. Like, so I don't have, like, I'm done, right? Like, I don't have to feel this anymore. And no, so, feeling your emotions, that helped me last week, getting my needs met. And there were days where I went to yoga one night and I'm feeling a little bit guilty because I'm like people are struggling with incredible loss, and I'm going to a yoga class, right? But to your point, like getting your needs met, but actually I can serve and help people more when I am, filled up and I get what I need. So not pushing myself last week on social media. Anyway, I just think it's great because what this healing journey does is, like you said, like getting your needs met, feeling your emotions. These are things you're going to use your entire life. I think that's really important. It's not just to get you out of chronic pain.
Right, that's right. Yeah, that's one of the beautiful things about this work is that in the process of alleviating pain or illness, we are helping people make changes that will serve them in many other areas of their lives. And one of the big ones is in self-care. It's putting yourself on the list of people for whom you care, because you deserve to be on that list along with everybody else. If you're a people-pleasing person, just have yourself on the list of people that you are pleasing. And the old expression of put your own oxygen mask on first. All of these things are so important. You can't really help others in a sustained way if you are spiraling downhill in your own health.
Yeah, no, and there's always going to be stress, unfortunately. So it is, how do you react to stress, just like how do you react to your symptom, and having the tools, right? So this is not about, okay, Jeannie, you can't strive for excellence, but instead of perfectionism, just, having high standards and not putting like so much pressure. And I think, yeah, I mean, when we work on these personality traits, it just helps us so much in our life because like I said, like making mistakes, how do you live you're going to live a really, really, really small, uneventful life if your main focus is not to make a mistake, right? So it's like building your capacity to make mistakes and have compassion if you fail, because we all do. And yeah, not caring what other people think and not worrying. It's remarkable how much this work helps. I think some people get a little afraid that like they're going to have to like do all the things their whole life, right? And I just see it as, like you said, it's the self-care, it's the emotional regulation. It's not like you have to do all the things your whole life, but if you need it, right? It's like what you need, not just doing everything. It's okay, great. You're doing great today. You don't need to meditate. Don't. And then, like I said, I was meditating more last week because I needed it.
Yeah, and being able to feel your own emotions, that's just basic human functioning. And if you are having emotions, but you are not aware of them or you're not feeling them, sooner or later, there's going to be consequences from that. And it's a learned skill, just like learning to do activities that have no purpose but your own joy. That takes lots of trial and error. It takes overcoming guilt about selfishly spending time on yourself, and learning to feel your emotions takes time as well. But if once you're able to do those things, then it also helps with your relationships. For example, if there are people in your life that are creating a certain amount of toxicity for you, it becomes a lot easier to set appropriate boundaries around those people so that they're not quite so impactful anymore.
Can I just say this is the best work for any parent as well, because when you can hold space for your own emotions, then you can hold space for your child's emotions, right? And teach them. So for example, if you can't feel your anger, you can't feel your sadness, then you're going to be so uncomfortable with your kids, and you're going to do exactly what I had. We're like, here's a lollipop, go drink a glass of wine if you're feeling upset, right? And then also, what are we teaching our kids if we don't ever make mistakes and we are just constantly, yeah, like, I don't know. I'm just like so passionate about it because this work is not just about chronic pain. Because I'm a stress coach, I also, work with clients with no kind of the chronic pain. And I'm just like, we all need this. You all need to know how to feel your emotions, get your needs met, the self-care, but the self-compassion too, and how we speak to ourselves. Huge. I mean, you can imagine the self. Well, I'll tell you, I had some very negative self-talk, and like I said, so much blame and shame throughout my journey because I wasn't getting better, and I was able just to release that pressure and the negative self-talk because turns out there wasn't anything wrong with me. And I know someone's listening right now who can relate to that.
Yeah, my patients often feel so weak, and the analogy that I like to use is that my patients are really like Olympic weightlifters who are being asked to carry 50 pounds more than the world record for their weight class. And, anybody who tries to do that is going to feel weak, and their body is going to start breaking down. But once, this whole process of healing is like learning to put the weight down. And once you do that, you realize how strong you had to have been all along.
Yeah, yeah, and then it's just how strong can you get? How strong can you be, right? So
Yeah, well, and you're starting from a very high baseline because, what's taught in to healthcare professionals is that people who have these issues are, they're weak and they're neurotic. And it's actually the opposite is true. If the healthcare professionals just took a moment to talk to people about what they were coping with, they would be amazed most of the time. I certainly was. Once I started realizing I had to ask people about their lives, past and present, and I started hearing their stories, I mean, if I had gone through what those individuals had gone through. I questioned whether I could have handled it as well, to be honest, because some of these things were just remarkably difficult. It does make me wonder if about how mistakes that you made as a child were approached. Were you allowed to make mistakes, or was it not quite as positive uh, or supportive an attitude toward that?
yeah, I don't remember like mistakes outside of anything outside of school. I just know I had to be the straight. Well, it was me though. It wasn't my parents. It was like being the straight A student. I remember think I got a D or I did fail a test and that was catastrophic. That was not in terms of, I mean, there was some blame there, but just, okay, spending hours and hours and hours for the next test, like highlighting everything and like writing everything so that like wouldn't make that, I don't know if a mistake, but I don't like fail again. But I don't really think outside of the academic, and I don't think there actually was pressure from my family, more like my own pressure of being perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and that could easily, as we discussed before, I mean, trying to be perfect can come from the idea that, you need to keep your emotions down and that, part of being perfect is not having negative emotions.
Yeah, and I always say too, as being a teacher, I can tell you what is taught in the schools. I think now after the pandemic there is more attention on emotions and feeling, but up until 2019 when I quit my job, I mean, we are not teaching emotions in school. We are not talking about like making mistakes or anything about this mindset of growth and learning, right? It was all, and I was guilty as charged, like perpetuating it. I'm a Spanish teacher. I'm like taking off points if you forget the tilde or you spell a word wrong, like points off, right? So I'm actually was doing, I mean, what I was taught, right? That's a mistake, points off. You made a mistake here. So mistakes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And everything today is magnified by social media. What we had to go through in our era in school is much, much more difficult today.
Yeah, no, definitely. But you can improve with these things. That's what I want to make sure people know. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that Yeah, and that's why it's, like, so encouraging and fun. Like I said, like, you're gonna be like a 2.0 version of yourself if you're going through this.
Yeah, no, it's amazes me when I look back how just in this field where I am today considered something of an expert, how many mistakes I made along the way.
Yeah, and I think that's exciting too, right? Because when you can start to bring back your power. So for me, I quit my job, right? And feeling very out of power, like no power at all. And then learning about this healing, neuroplastic pain, okay, stepping into my power physically, right? And then wouldn't you know, like now I'm professionally taking more risks and I'm trusting myself. I'm not just trusting myself with what I'm eating and my whole journey into health, but now I'm trusting myself professionally, right? And career choices where before, again, and oh my goodness, how much new entrepreneurs, like when I was a new entrepreneur, there's a lot of failing and a lot of self-judgment. So this really supported me through that.
Yeah, no, that's a great story, and I can relate to it because I closed my practice in 2009, and um, soon after that was launching the nonprofit, which was still to this day an entrepreneurial venture, and started out with zero knowledge of how to do that. Unless you have a growth mindset, unless you're willing to fail, it's not going to grow.
And feedback too. I mean, that's something I'm still working on. It's still, but like negative feedback was crushing, like it destroyed me before. And now it's easier, but I'm still working on it, right? Like criticism, especially if it's unsolicited, I will say that. But yeah, definitely better with negative because we need it, right? As we're growing, as we're evolving our work and everything we're doing, it is helpful. But yeah, like all these things come together. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the hardest thing for a perfectionist. I don't consider myself a perfectionist, but definitely if you're a perfectionist and somebody comes down on you about a mistake that you've made, you're going to be much harder on yourself than you would on somebody else who made the same mistake, for example.
Yeah, I call myself a recovering perfectionist, but I think it's cool. I think it's cool too in this space, right? Like when I teach my breathwork classes, I'll say, how you do one thing is how you do everything. So like, don't quit on yourself in this class and believe you can do it, right? And it's kind of like the through line with this healing, right? I mean, I healed, got better on the other side, and then I took everything I learned and like popped it into my business, right? So it's, not the healing part of it, but I mean, much, much, much of it, and I started, with like my business ventures and stuff, but I needed that. And like, look I'm going to fail. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to have a hard month when I start, right? So guess what? I can feel that sadness. I can feel my frustration. I tell people it is a freaking superpower to feel your emotions because then you're going to be able to take risks. Like think about dating, right? So if you're dating, you don't want to ever get your heart broken. The way to completely make sure that is possible is you'll never date. You'll never get in a relationship. You'll never try. So if I'm helping someone like just with dating, for example, it's like, yeah, your superpower is like you get rejected. I agree. It feels horrible. This is awful, but you'll feel it. You'll give yourself compassion and then you'll move through it faster. You don't get stuck in the story and then decide you're never going to date for 20 years.
Yeah. And my patients who recognize how much they have overcome in their lives to get to the place where they are today. If they can internalize the belief in their own heroic perseverance in what they've accomplished, then the relationships that are going to happen for them are going to be much healthier, much more mutually supportive. If you're still in a place where you're not feeling your emotions and you're consequently into the people pleasing and perfectionism, the relationships you're going to tend to fall into are with people who have needs, with people who, have problems that you need to solve and focus on, and the relationships become unbalanced, 95% giving and 5% getting back, which is not sustainable. But once you reach a place where, you know what, I'm a pretty amazing person, given everything that I have overcome, you're only going to accept people in your life who agree with you that you're amazing.
Yeah, and I think if you go back to vulnerability, I don't know if you've heard of Brene Brown before. Have you?
No, actually.
Oh, no, you haven't?
I have not.
Okay, so she's a researcher. She's kind of the expert. She's an author, but a researcher, and she's like an expert on shame and kind of emotions too. And, and she talks about like deeper connection, right, with your partner, anyone. Deeper connection is built on vulnerability. If you are not vulnerable, like the relationship can be superficial, right? Can tend to. So when you're able to be vulnerable with yourself, when you can allow and connect to yourself, it allows you to connect and be vulnerable with others, which is like that deep connection we're craving. When we're going on Instagram, half the time it's because we're wanting connection, not getting it there, but the connection we're really wanting is with ourselves. And so connect with yourself deeply, be vulnerable with your own emotions. That's going to deepen any relationship that you have. And that's what's happened with me too, like a depth I had no idea was even possible, right?
Yeah, you have to be, ironically, you have to be strong in yourself before you can be vulnerable with another person.
Exactly. So that's why on yourself is the first step, in my opinion. Yeah.
But when you can look back at recovering from 16 years of physical hell, that is a reason to believe in yourself.
Oh, thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Well, this has been a remarkable discussion, and it's going to be so valuable to our viewers. And I am so grateful that you came on and were willing to share your story in such wonderful detail. Can I answer any other questions, or do you have anything else that you'd like to share with people before we close?
No, I mean, I think, yeah, I just love talking with you. I think it's such an honor to be here. I know I met you in Colorado at the conference, but yeah, I do coaching now. I'm helping people. So, yeah, I just love this work. I'm so passionate about it. Yeah, if like people want to, connect with me, you can just find me on Instagram. And yeah, there's just lots of ways that you can connect.
That's great to hear. And we need everybody possible spreading the word about this so that it becomes common knowledge that your brain can do these things to you. And even better, that there's a wonderful solution that's been scientifically validated. And if people know about this, they're going to take advantage of it. And that's all we can hope for.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, and just knowing it's possible. I love just this field so much because, like I said, my background isn't in the medical field, but this is all based on neuroscience. I love how you're always like in the Facebook groups if someone says something like that's not based on brain science. I just love that. Like, if someone says to me, in a session, they're like, "Well, I can't change my thoughts," or "Well, this is how I am." Nope, based on the neuroscience, you are wrong. So I just love that I have that in my back pocket of always just sharing that you can change your thoughts. These are neural pathways. Everyone can do it. So if anyone's listening that thinks that they can't heal, that somehow they're different, we want to from, a chronic pain expert and Dr. Clarke, who's like the medical and expert in every way, right? You are not so different. Like, what would you say, Dr. Clarke? I know people struggle with that. I've given lots of ways to remind them, but if someone says that someone else can heal, but I can't heal.
I point people back to our 12-question quiz on symptomatic.me. I spent days on, every line of that quiz so that when people finish it, they will have a lot of insight that they didn't have before. It's arranged in a way that the more questions to which you answer yes, the more likely it is that there's a neuroplastic process going on to explain your symptoms. When people take that quiz, it doesn't cover everything because people finish it in less than 3 minutes, but it gives a lot of insight and self-recognition that people can have that will show them that these ideas apply to them, and that if they take advantage of the resources that my nonprofit and your coaching business provides, that they're going to make progress.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just love telling people, reminding them that every journey is different. So it's okay if you don't like this tool or that tool, but it's still so possible for you. So I think that is really good news. And you've got 2 people here rooting you on.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I've seen this work for over 7,000 people since the 1980s. So it absolutely is effective.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's been a pleasure.